About the discovery of the remains of Suzanne Morphew, the Salida mom who went missing on Mother's Day of 2020. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation announced it had discovered her remains near the town of Moffett.
That's about 2 hours southwest of Colorado Springs and not far from Sand Dunes National Park in Saguache County. KRDO News Channel 13's Annabelle Childers is live in Moffett at the area. Locals believe that discovery happened. Annabelle?
We are right off Highway 17 in Moffett, surrounded by bits and pieces of caution tape, and you can see two pieces right there tied to these plants. Now, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation will not confirm that this is exactly where Suzanne Morphew's remains were found, but several locals, including the Moffett fire chief, believe it is because they say they saw investigators here for multiple days over the weekend.
It's not what we want to be known for. Yeah, and so it's a mixed bag.
Through nervous laughter, Jane's reflecting on all the attention currently on her small town. Over the weekend, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation discovered two bodies in Moffett while searching for a different missing woman. And shocking the nation, they announced they found the remains of Suzanne Morphew, the Salida mom missing since 2020.
I was relieved that they finally found her, and maybe they can resolve who the culprit was.
The Moffett fire chief and multiple locals believe they saw CBI crews working to recover her. They say they saw multiple law enforcement vehicles in this area for about 3 to 4 days. And while driving to work, they saw one person waist deep in the ground working. And another resident who works at a Dollar General in Moffett says she saw a helicopter flying above this area on Saturday in a, quote, grid pattern. Jane says she's been following the disappearance of Suzanne closely and actually ran into her multiple times in Salida before she went missing. She believes this discovery is one more step toward the truth.
Some resolve, some closure with it for everybody.
By now, you likely know that Barry Morphew has been indicted by a grand jury for first-degree red rum, I can't say the M word, in connection to the disappearance and death of his 49-year-old wife, Suzanne Morphew, from the couple's home in Chaffee County, Colorado. This is actually the second time that Barry finds himself charged with Suzanne's death. Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T. Do me a favor, please smash that like button and please subscribe to my channel. When Barry was first charged on May 5th of 2021, Suzanne's remains hadn't yet been found. Unfortunately, in 2022, just 9 days before Barry's trial was scheduled to begin, the case was dropped because of discovery violations by the prosecutor that led to the exclusion of 11 of their 16 expert witnesses. The former district attorney, Linda Stanley, was then disbarred. This was because of her failure to release potentially exculpatory evidence, such as unknown male DNA that was found in Suzanne's SUV. Barry Morphew ended up walking out of jail arm in arm with his two daughters, Macy and Mallory. Barry later sued the police and the prosecutors for $15 million for wrongful prosecution. I'll give Barry this, he's got a lot of gall and a lot of balls. It wasn't until September 2023 that Suzanne's remains were found in a shallow grave near Moffett, Colorado, about an hour away from her home. The autopsy concluded that Suzanne's cause of death was homicide caused by, quote, undetermined means in the setting of butorphanol, azapironi, and medetomidine, otherwise known as BAM. BAM is a mixture typically used by hunters of large prey. We're talking deer and bears. The cocktail quickly sedates the animals. Now, BAM has to be prescribed, and prosecutors found out that Barry was the only person in that part of Colorado who had a prescription for BAM. By the way, BAM is not supposed to be used on humans, as it can lead to death. The reason I'm telling you about BAM is because it was found in one of Suzanne's bones. In addition to that, a tranquilizer dart from a tranquilizer gun was found in Barry Morphew's dryer along with sheets right after Suzanne went missing. So last week, Barry was arrested in Gilbert, Arizona for the second time, and he is currently being held on a $3 million cash bond. In Arizona, prosecutors are seeking his extradition to the San Luis Valley in Colorado. The new indictment states that no one other than Barry Morphew purchased BAM in the relevant region of Colorado in the years leading up to Suzanne going missing. Only Barry Morphew had BAM. Busted. Here's what investigators believed happened to Suzanne before she was reported missing on Sunday, May 10th of 2020 by her neighbors. First, according to some family members and some of her friends, Suzanne was not happy in her marriage, and she was actually having an affair with an old high school friend, a married guy named Jeff Libler. Jeff has 6 children. It sounds like Suzanne was under the impression and maybe knew for sure that Barry was unfaithful to her first. So it sounds like she might have had the attitude, what's good for the gander is good for the goose, for many years. And Suzanne had been battling a form of lymphoma. So I would imagine that if she was unhappy with Barry, she was thinking to herself, my children are grown now, they're going to be going to college, one of them is already in college, and now maybe it's time for me to pursue happier climates, to be with somebody who I enjoy versus somebody that I don't. On or about May 9th into May 10th of 2020, Suzanne suddenly disappeared. And at 5:46 p.m., on that Sunday, which was Mother's Day, Suzanne was reported missing by a neighbor. Investigators showed up at the Morphews' beautiful home on Puma Path near Salida, Colorado, to investigate the missing persons report. They found the home locked. Suzanne, despite her vehicle being in the garage, her SUV, Suzanne appeared not to be home. There were no signs of forced entry. The only things missing were Suzanne and her bike. Now, later that night, the bike was found down a steep hill off a dirt road between the Morphew home and Highway 50. The bike was less than a mile from the house. Suzanne was not with the bike, and frankly, it looked as if the bike had been staged there. Fast forward 4 days to May 14th, and Suzanne's bike helmet was located 10 meters off the side of Highway 50, about 1.52 miles from her home. Barry Morphew was interviewed by the police, and he told the cops that he'd set his alarm to wake up at 4:30 a.m. Barry told the police that he left the house at 5 a.m. that morning for a pre-planned work trip to Broomfield, Colorado. Now, Broomfield is 2 hours and 45 minutes away by car. Per Barry, or Bear as we like to call him, Suzanne was still sleeping in bed when he left. He told the detectives that Suzanne had planned to go for a bike ride on Mother's Day. So Barry drives to Broomfield, supposedly to prep an area for landscaping. He said he arrived in Broomfield, checked into the hotel, and then went to check on the job site. He said he received a call around 5 p.m. from the neighbors who told him that his daughters were concerned because they could not reach their mother, Suzanne, by phone all day. Both daughters were out of town at the time. Barry asked the neighbors to check the house and to look for Suzanne's bike. The neighbors don't see Suzanne's bike or Suzanne, so then Barry asks them to dial 911, which is sort of weird. The police end up interviewing one of Barry's employees who was supposed to help with the job in Broomfield. The employee told the cops that they weren't supposed to leave for the job until the evening of Sunday, May 10th, and they were going to do the drive together. But instead, Barry went all the way to Broomfield by himself. The employee later drives to Broomfield, and he said when he arrived at the hotel, not only did the room reek of bleach and have wet towels all over it, Barry had failed to bring the right tools for the job. So the police, I'm sure, were thinking, this all sounds very fishy. The cops then look at the hotel's security cameras as well as cameras belonging to nearby businesses, and the footage reveals that Barry was in Broomfield that Sunday for 9 hours and 45 minutes, but he spent less than half an hour at the job site. So what was he doing during his time in Broomfield? Well, electronic evidence and security cameras showed Barry driving around to various locations and throwing away unknown items in separate trash cans. I can't help thinking about Fotis Dulis. He did the same thing when his ex-wife went missing. Remember that, Jennifer Dulis? One thing you don't want to do is be picked up by security cameras driving from dumpster to dumpster right after your wife goes missing. Now, on that same Sunday, May 10th, Barry arrived back at the hotel and stayed in the room between 12:34 p.m. and 5:55 p.m., so he was in there roughly 5.5 hours. And is that when he was using bleach to clean various items? Remember, the room just reeked of bleach. Barry had told the police that he was working all day at the job site. So all of this stuff, these were big red flags. Barry also lied to the police when he told them that his marriage was a very happy one. It was the best of marriages. And when he was asked if Suzanne would answer that question differently, Barry said no. She would also say that our marriage was wonderful. Sorry, but I'm not a fan of Barry Morphew's. Barry, quite the fib fairy. Again, Suzanne had confided in friends that she was unhappy in her marriage in the weeks and the months leading up to her disappearance. She'd even discussed her plans to divorce Barry with a close friend, as well as she said things to her sister that were very telling, indicating that the marriage was not good. And we know, of course, that Suzanne was having a secret affair with a guy friend from high school, Jeff Libler, and they communicated daily via LinkedIn and WhatsApp. Now, on the weekend that Suzanne disappeared, her daughters were away from home. One was away at college, and another one was on a pre-planned trip out of state. Because of all of that, Suzanne and Barry were alone in the house from May 5th until late May 10th into early Monday, May 11th. So if Barry wanted to do away with Suzanne, that particular weekend was perfect for him. The police say that Suzanne's last electronic message was to Jeff Libler on May 9, 2020 at 2:11 p.m. That was just 32 minutes before Barry Morphew arrived home that day. When the police looked at Barry's cell phone, they found a text from Suzanne that read, quote, "I'm done. I could care less what you're up to and have been for years. We just need to figure things out civilly," end quote. On May 11th, the day after Suzanne was reported missing, the authorities searched the Morphew home, and that's when they found a tranquilizer rifle positioned toward the front of a locked gun safe in the garage. They also found packages of tranquilizer darts that are used in those weapons, and there was the one dart cap that was found in the dryer. They did not actually find the tranquilizer solution, BAM. Knowing that Suzanne's last proof of life was her text to Jeff Liebler at 2:11 p.m. on Saturday, May 9th, while she was sunbathing in a bikini on the back patio, the police began to piece together a story of what may have happened. So Suzanne was sunbathing. A download of Barry's cell phone data showed that he arrived home on May 9th at 2:43 p.m., roughly a half hour after Suzanne sent that message to Jeff. Now, Barry appears to have turned his cell phone off at 2:47 p.m. That was just 4 minutes after he arrived home. He would not turn the phone back on until 10:17 p.m. that night. Thus, in my opinion, whatever happened to Suzanne likely went down between 2:43 p.m. and, say, 10:17 p.m. It's been theorized that Barry came home, maybe caught Suzanne in the act of communicating with her secret lover. Barry then turned his phone off again at 4:32 a.m. Sunday morning. Barry, jealous, allegedly grabs his tranquilizer GUN, the same one he uses on deer and other large prey. He allegedly chased Suzanne around the patio and into the house and up into the master bedroom. It looks like she got in there, locked the door, and then he likely broke into the door because the door frame was damaged when the police searched the home the next day. It's unclear when the perpetrator actually hit Suzanne with the dart full of the tranquilizer. I'm assuming it was likely when she was in the master bedroom. Again, that solution was detected in one of Suzanne's bones. And that solution could possibly have been what led to her death. If Barry is responsible, he spent some time, likely Saturday night into Sunday morning, getting rid of the evidence and hiding the body, allegedly. Barry also acted strangely after Suzanne went missing. When Suzanne's brother set up a large search for his sister, Barry would not allow anybody on his property, and he appeared to have friends policing the property with weapons in hand. Barry definitely wasn't playing nice. Now, Suzanne's remains were found 3 years later on September 22nd of 2023. The remains were in a shallow grave a few hundred feet down a dirt road off Highway 17. This location was less than an hour south of the Morphew home. The majority of her bones were recovered, but many of them were said to be significantly bleached. A very sad and poignant detail in the indictment is that Suzanne's cancer port was also located with her remains. A weathered bullet was also found near her remains, but it's unclear if that bullet played a role in Suzanne's death. The indictment, there was no visible peri-mortem trauma observed. Peri-mortem means around the time of death, when the person may have been dying or when they had just died. So no trauma from when Suzanne was dying or right after she died was observed. I'm going to take that to mean that there were likely no wounds from a regular GUN. A board-certified forensic anthropologist, a botanist, and an entomologist, which is a scientist who studies insects, all analyzed the remains, and they noted a distinct lack of bug activity, which was inconsistent with the remains having decomposed at that location in Moffett, Colorado. The clothing items also lacked evidence of decomposition, which was also inconsistent with Suzanne actually wearing those clothes at the time that her body decomposed. Now that's very weird. It sounds like Suzanne's body was moved to Moffett at some point. It also sounds like the perpetrator put the biking clothes on her body after the fact, because I'm pretty sure she was wearing her bikini when Barry was chasing her around the house, allegedly. So if Suzanne didn't decompose the entire time in that shallow grave, where was her body prior to that? The winters in Colorado can be very, very cold. Does that mean it was kept cold somewhere else? Was her body stashed somewhere in the snow? So Barry told the investigators that Suzanne had planned to go on a bike ride on Sunday, May 10th, Mother's Day. Her bike appeared, however, to have been thrown down the hill where it was found, meaning it was probably planted there to make it look either like Suzanne had had an accident or like somebody had nabbed her and thrown her bike down there to throw the cops off. And the bike clothing that was found with her remains was likely also planted to once again make it look like Suzanne really had gone for a bike ride. Another detail that was noted in the indictment was a lack of animal predation on the remains. They also said that Suzanne only had a small amount of desiccated soft tissue that was found on a few of the bones, and there was no hair mass found. So I'm assuming that would be her hair. What happened to that? Is that in the earlier location where the body may have been hidden? Per the indictment, the hair would have been found with the remains if that had been the original gravesite where decomposition occurred. So again, it points to the body being moved at some point. The forensic anthropologist speculated that based on these factors, it was unlikely Suzanne decomposed from a fresh body to a skeleton at that location in Moffett. The El Paso County Coroner's Office conducted an autopsy. They also did additional toxicology testing at the request of law enforcement for the presence of BAM. The chief toxicologist tested Suzanne Morphew's bone marrow for the presence of BAM, and all three components of it were present. And according to the indictment, her death was not immediate following the BAM exposure because Suzanne's body had begun to metabolize the drug before she died. It takes several minutes for BAM to take effect. BAM, again, is not designed to be used on humans, and it can be lethal when it does come to a human. And in fact, the prescription comes with reversal agents in the kit. So just in case, you can inject something that will sort of serve as an antidote. BAM would have rendered Suzanne wholly immobile, unable to move, vulnerable, and unable to resist any constrictions to her neck. If somebody tried to stop her from breathing, she wouldn't have been able to fight back. And Barry had filled a BAM prescription in March of 2018. He obtained multiple kits that each contained multiple doses just a few months before he and Suzanne made the move to Colorado. I'm sure he purchased that BAM for animals, but I think when he decided, allegedly, that he wasn't going to let Suzanne leave him, whether this was because of his desire to control her or his desire to have control over her assets, because she had inherited a large amount of money that had gone into the purchase of that huge home in Colorado. I think it looks like Barry had a plan in mind to handle the situation, pre-planned. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Holding hands with his daughters, Barry Morphew heads to a hearing hoping to have the charge he murdered his wife dropped. I'm Dominic Garcia, bringing you CBS 4 News at noon, live on CBS 4 and CBS News Colorado. Morphew charged in the murder of Suzanne Morphew. She disappeared in 2020, and her body has never been found. That case moved out of Chaffee County because of publicity. CBS 4's Rick Salinger was at that hearing, joins us from Canyon City. And Rick, the defense raised some issues about the prosecution.
Well, Dominic, the defense maintains that statements made by a lead CBI agent about the case should have been turned over to them before the preliminary hearing. Now, Barry Morphew arrived at court, as you said, with his daughters at his side. Their support apparently still strong. Their mother, Suzanne, missing close to 2 years now. Former CBI case supervisor Joe Cahill's recorded statements were played for the court. One of those statements, he said, "This case is not even remotely ready for anybody to put it forward yet." Morphew was arrested last May and later bound over for trial at a preliminary hearing. Now the defense wants the case thrown out, or at least sanctions of some sort placed on the prosecution for failure to turn that information over. This hearing is expected to go on the rest of the day. The judge could decide to throw it out, place sanctions, or just go forward with the trial scheduled a few months from now. Live in Canyon City, Rick Salinger.
Like, literally, our worst nightmare.
New at noon, Barry Morphew and his daughters are speaking out exclusively to ABC News.
That's right. 3 years later, we're hearing from the husband who was accused of killing his wife, Suzanne Morphew. He's opening up about the investigation into her disappearance and his new $15 million lawsuit. It's against prosecutors and law enforcement. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Josh Holman.
And I'm Bryn Carmen. Good to see you.
Now, the Morphew family just spent their third Mother's Day in a row without Suzanne.
The Chaffee County mother vanished without a trace in 2020 and to this day has never been found. KRDO News Channel 13's Jessica Grunling reports on the demands for justice as the investigation to find Suzanne is now cold.
Barry Morphew had been charged with murder. That and other charges all dropped last year. Barry continues to maintain his innocence and says he was wrongfully charged in her death. Suzanne Morphew mysteriously vanished 3 years ago on Mother's Day. Her body has never been found and authorities believe she's dead. It's officially been classified a cold case.
Very, very sad. Very confusing. Just so traumatic. Like, literally, our worst nightmare.
Her husband, Barry Morphew, was initially charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence, but those charges were dropped before his trial. Barry tells ABC News his life has been ruined by false accusations, and his daughters say they never had a doubt their dad is innocent.
They're wrong. They've got tunnel vision, and they looked at one person, and they've got too much pride to say they're wrong and look somewhere else.
He's filing a $15 million civil lawsuit against prosecutors, the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, and several investigators. But Barry's case was dismissed without prejudice, meaning prosecutors can still file charges against him. Prosecutors say at the time they believed that they were close to finding Suzanne's body and dropped those charges against Barry, hoping for additional evidence.
Well, I was innocent the first time they arrested me, so I'm sure it's possible. But I don't have anything to worry about. I've done nothing wrong.
Barry and his daughter say there was nothing wrong with their marriage, but prosecutors have texts which appear to show a strained marriage. Suzanne refers to Barry as Jekyll and Hyde just before she disappeared, telling Barry, "I'm done."
I know that she was going through chemotherapy for the last couple of years before her disappearance, and I know she was going through some hard things and made some bad decisions. She was really having trouble with the chemotherapy and the drugs.
Investigators say Suzanne was also involved with someone else. Barry told ABC News he no longer lives in Colorado because of the accusations made against him. Reporting in the newsroom, Jessica Grunling, KRDO News Channel 13.
Been silent for a long time, and we've decided that we finally want to break the silence.
The family of Suzanne Morphew is sitting down for an interview for the first time since the murder charges against Barry Morphew were dropped.
It's been an emotional roller coaster, but we feel like we can finally take our first steps in healing, which is a blessing. And yeah, we just know our dad better than anyone else, and we know he was not involved in our mom's disappearance.
Mallory and Macy Morphew standing by their father, who investigators believe was responsible for their mother's disappearance 2 years ago. The three seen walking out of court arm in arm just moments after the charges against him were dropped.
We want to heal. We feel like we haven't been able to heal these past 2 years.
The family says Suzanne left her Colorado home for a bike ride but never returned.
I just love my girls, and I love my wife. I just want her to be found.
But investigators told a different story, arresting Barry Morphew. The charges against him ranging from first-degree murder to tampering with physical evidence. Prosecutors argued that Morphew discovered his wife was having an affair, then killed her, disposed of her body, and staged a bike crash in a rural area. They released this body camera footage from the hours after she was reported missing, police saying Morphew touched evidence.
Hey, could you not touch the bike with your hands, please?
Morphew's daughters say he isn't a killer and are celebrating the dismissal of the charges, now demanding District Attorney Linda Stanley do more.
I just hope that Linda will step up to the plate and do everything she can to find our mom, because what they've done is not fair. And we're never going to stop looking for our mom.
Court filings say that while authorities are close to discovering Suzanne's body, weather has complicated the efforts. The location where Suzanne's body is believed to be has 5 feet of snow concealing it. Barry Morphew's attorney says authorities have mishandled the case and are planning to file a complaint against the DA.
And if you want to honor Suzanne and you want to honor the daughters, go find Suzanne.
The DA's office telling ABC News they and law enforcement have been diligently searching for Suzanne Morphew since she was reported missing, and that they are continuing to do so.
Prosecutors need to be held responsible, and they need to pay for the damage they've caused to Barry, which is frankly nearly irreparable, because it's hard for anybody to believe that Barry is not who they claim he was.
Right.
That's what innocence looks like, right there.
Iris, do you want to come over here?
I'm good. I'll come back.
Okay.